Okay, so we're recording, and I'd like to first of all welcome you, Lee, and thank you very much indeed for taking the time to um, answer some questions about the TDSL live program, because you've recently completed the course. And so I wanted to ask you a number of questions, please, about what your experience of, first of all, your first impressions of TDSL and what your experience of the live program has been, and how you relate to the principle and the information itself. So I'd like to start off, please, by asking you the question, what kind of challenges were you facing with regard to your self-communications before hearing about TDSL? And what was your interest, particularly in taking a look at this, developing the dialogue of self-liberation?
Yeah, well, it's a tricky one, because before doing it, I wasn't actually aware of the issue of self-communications. Like I was aware of the way I think, for example, but I didn't think of it as a process that is happening inside my head, which I can easily change. I just thought of it as, people have issues, I have some issues, and that's that kind of thing. I wasn't aware that you can work through that in your own head, and by outlining a process and a way of doing it, that you could make things better quite rapidly, in my case, as I found. When I say that, I don't mean to say there was I found there wasn't a particular thing I had in mind, or an issue that I had, but I quickly discovered that there were some limitations that I had been putting myself, and I was limiting myself, and there were things I could improve. You want to know specifically which areas they were, or?
Well, maybe we could move on from here to, I'd like to ask you what your experience of learning the dialogue of self-liberation has been. What did you first think as you discovered the principle?
Yeah, because at the start we talk about a list of words that you say to yourself, or a list of negative communications you have with yourself, and I found it hard initially to identify exactly what they were, until I understood a bit more of the process, and found that I had more like an idea of myself, like a caricature, let's say, in my head about who I am and who people think I am, that I was perhaps sticking to more than was necessary. And that was my first real understanding, the first sort of foot in the door, where I thought, oh, okay, I have this. And then that led on, as the course went on, and as we spoke, to further understanding of how I see myself.
And do you feel that how you see yourself has changed through going through this process on the live program? And if so, in what ways?
I don't think it's changed, because it's just become clearer. I sort of see the tricks that I'm doing. I've had a few times where I thought, oh, hold on there, what's going on here? And then I understand it, and things become much lighter through going through that process of working it out. And it's not something. It's something that comes and goes. It's not saying, oh, this is, now I know it, I catch it every time. I sometimes just sort of have a sense of something's wrong here, or I feel slightly uncomfortable or unsure of myself in the situation, and I might just remember, oh, why is that? And it helps me to work through and clear things up. It doesn't change the way that I see myself or who I am in any way. It just gives me a brief pause to see things clearer.
So how would you feel that the dialogue of self-liberation potentially helps a person in their communication with other people and our relationships with other people?
Yeah, that is what I found interesting, leading on from, well, as I say, I put my foot in the door and understood how I was speaking and limiting myself. Because then once you understand that, then you see how that is, you're projecting that out onto perhaps other people. I started to realize, well, if I'm doing that, having that conversation in my head about me, I'm also having it in my head about my judgments on other people. And that was interesting because I realized, people say, oh, I'm not a judgmental person. And I thought that about myself, but you realize that absolutely you are, about yourself and about other people. So yeah, I quickly learned that it's exactly the same, the thinking inwardly about me, and also it works the other way, outwardly.
Have you noticed any changes in the way people who are close to you, or other people in general, have responded to you maybe slightly differently as a result of reassessing how you've been communicating toward yourself?
Yes, whether I can give you a specific yes and an example, I'm not sure, but from their perspective, I mean to say, but I have felt freer in communicating with others, and I sense a benefit in the communications that I've had with them. Um, no one said, "Oh, Lee, this has changed. You're different." Or I've just felt before, perhaps more shy to say something. I don't know. To a close relative, you can be guarded to people really close to you, and really open and positive and complimentary to people who aren't. Um, and in that way, I I noticed that and thought, well, why the hell are you doing this, Lee? Why are you communicating this way? And so I started communicating more openly and authentically with people closer to me, in my perspective. Yeah, which I think improved things.
Can I ask you, please, in your own particular unique way, what is the dialogue of self-liberation?
Um, the way that it's manifested for me, the way that I have understood it, is understanding that everything that you think, it goes through the filter of your head, and if you don't pay attention to that, you create this story of everything that's going in. You have the option to choose to believe that sort of default setting if you want, and you do, because you're not conscious all the time of the way that you're thinking. But I started to understand, well, you taught the way that words and this story that these words create can really have big effects. So then, using the principle and the skills that you taught, I started to play around with that story. It's like, does it have to be this story in my head? Can I change it? And I had some really good examples during the course and the weeks where I really caught myself changing that story and was really happy with that. And so for me, the principle is, yeah, is changing the story in your head, because everything is just a story that you tell yourself. Yeah.
And how practical have you found the information to be?
Super practical, yeah, because I can see the difference in my outlook from changing the story instantly. So it's something that I have worked on a lot through following the course, because of the set visualizations and just me wanting to understand it a bit better anyway, just having a coffee and sitting there and thinking about it. And in those moments where I have and had sort of a breakthrough of a certain thought, I realized, wow, if I could really focus on this a lot more, or as much as possible, I could alter all kinds of ways that I process information and the story of the world around me. Yeah. So it's quite strong, quite instant.
That's fantastic, Lee. Thank you very much. Can I ask you now, we emphasize toward the latter part of the live program the value of developing self-compassion and therefore compassion authentically in our dealings with people and life in general. What are your feelings about the emphasis we place on self-compassion?
Yeah, because through understanding that that's how you filtered that story, and not and if you let that run, of you're not to it's not something that you're at fault for, because that is our default. You're not at fault for operating at your default setting without knowing. So understanding that was good, but most importantly, it was better for me to understand that that is how everyone's functioning. So the compassion that I gained towards other people was something that I benefited from much stronger than compassion for myself, because in my circumstances that kind of made sense for me. So I could be, okay, I just need to pay more attention to the way I'm processing things, and that's fine. But then when I would catch other people communicating in those ways, I would think, oh, okay, I can see what he's doing. You know, I can understand why he's operating that way or she's operating that way. And I would know, well, we're all in the same boat in that way. And therefore the sense of compassion for everybody around me grew.
You know, one thing that we both share a very strong kind of passion for and active involvement in is training in martial arts. And so one of the terms that we refer to in the dialogue of self-liberation is that when a person's acquiring the understanding and they begin to work with it, that it naturally becomes filtered through the lens of that person's unique experience. So as a martial arts practitioner, do you feel that the principles that we outline are in harmony with your own experience of the principles that you have been studying and developing an understanding of through your martial art practice? Was there a compatibility there for you?
Yes, and no. The compatibility, it's a hard one to put them together. I did make in the course the comparison because when it's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that I trained. So when I first started, I got to a level of understanding. I was able to broadly see then that, oh wow, I made these advancements from being really into something. And I started later in life as well. So it opened my eyes to thinking, well, this isn't something that I could have done when I was younger. You know, anything I wanted to do, I could just put the effort in and do it. That was a big eye-opener for me in jiu-jitsu. I just need to know the concepts, and then I just need the practice, and that works for everything. And that was really strong. I was about 29 when I learned that, and it was, yeah, as I say, I became much more confident because I just realised that everything that people do is just that process repeated. With the dialogue and the principles, it's hard to say because it makes sense because of that reason. I already know that from jiu-jitsu, so it's hard to really explain how it works on the dialogue because it filtered in that same way that jiu-jitsu did. And I think that's why it's quite interesting, because you outline the principles and I've gone away thinking, oh, is it this? Can I do this with it? Can I do this? And so it's all starting to sink in, or, you know, and I've just got to continue on with it, I suppose, in the same way. So that's how they're connected, but it's also hard to explain.
Yeah, I think that's very honest and very clear and very appropriate response there, Lee. I guess really what I'm what I feel personally is that the principles of this contain a very definite correspondence with some of the principles that make the most sense for me in training and art. It could be anything really, and one of those things being investing in loss. It's through the mistakes that we may have made that we have the maximum capacity to learn and grow.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, and I guess I don't have the kids in jiu-jitsu, you're losing all the time. So, you know, that just becomes part of it. So for me, perhaps that's why I accept the principle quite well, because I think, well, yeah, I am an idiot, you know. I have been an idiot. It's quite easy for me to accept that, because you're used to being shown up all the time on the mat if you're training. You know you don't know everything. So perhaps that was very handy in that way without me realizing. Yeah.
So could I ask you now, please, how would you describe or explain the benefits of the dialogue of self-liberation to a friend?
Yeah, I will. It's tricky because it depends. It's all things. For me, I didn't have anything in my mind that I wanted to work on. Thankfully, I didn't have anything horrific in my past I was trying to work through. But everyone does have things in their past to work through. So not to say I wasn't using it, but it benefits people in all ways. So depending on the friend, depending on what I would say, but I would say to all my friends that it's useful, because stress with work, I have a friend who's very stressed with that, and it can help them with their confidence and working through stress and dealing with that better. I have other friends in other situations that would need it as well. It's just the process of, I think it really is useful for gaining confidence, and really aids decision making, making decisions for yourself, and that benefits everyone around you and everything that you do. You know, so it's very broad. So I have friends in mind when I've spoke about this course, that I'm doing, speaking to them, and one big plus I found is that a lot of people get it straight away and relate to it, which also highlights how many people will find uses in this. Because various friends have said, oh, I had no thought in my mind that they needed to understand this. I was just talking about my week, something interesting to put on the table to discuss. And they said, yeah, well, you know, I do this when X, Y, Z. And I think, oh, wow, okay, yeah. It's very approachable. It's very, very open, very approachable. Yeah.
So have you been able to spot in listening to other people how they communicate, how they speak about their own experiences and their own beliefs and feelings or problems? Have you been able to spot those self-defeating patterns and habits and beliefs in the way other people around you have been communicating about themselves?
Yeah, massively. And because it's so common, you know, we all just like to get together and moan. And I didn't realize how common it was, because that was just that it's not spotting it in a conversation. Quite often that is the conversation with my friends, and you sort of you all sit there complaining and wallowing in it. And so it wasn't spotting specific things that someone has said. It was spotting, I'd say, look at our situation, look what we're sort of saying here, me included. And so it's so common. I'd be lying to you if I said, oh, I spotted it on this one occasion. I was spotting it all the time. Yeah. And it was a compassion thing as well, you know, talking to a very good friend, and spotting that our whole conversation was this. And then I had a better understanding of him, of a very good friend, through my knowledge of this than I had done before, you know.
I think that's a wonderful thing you just described there, to be able to empathize, or to to feel compassion for people around us maybe more clearly than we've been able to previously.
Mm.
Sometimes we're so wrapped up in our own monologue and our own experience that we don't really listen, we don't really perceive or sense or feel other people and what they may be going through. And we mask things, don't we? I think not exclusively, but very much as men, we mask our feelings, we mask our frailties, our wobbles, our insecurities. We never really discuss these things.
Mm.
You know, that's really what friends are for, isn't it? You know, to be able to feel comfortable enough in each other's company, to be able to help each other.
Yeah, definitely. And then that's a big topic as well, because of some people I have in mind that I think could really benefit from this. Although I'm still working on being authentic in my communications, there's still, how do I approach this with this person, you know, going through my head. So yeah, it can be tricky. I'm still working on it myself, like how to communicate with people in those instances. Yeah.
But it is work in progress, isn't it, for all of us? It's as we mentioned that this the whole work of developing the dialogue of self-liberation isn't goal orientated, but instead it's process orientated. So it's about understanding that it is a process that we're choosing to engage in.
Yeah, there's still someone I know I should be much. I should have a talk with, try and help, you know, and I'm still putting it off. So yeah, work in progress.
So could I ask you finally, what would you say to somebody who was considering joining the TDSL live program, but was maybe sitting a little bit on the fence? They weren't quite sure. What would you say to them?
I would say, from all my previous answers, that, you know, it's so useful. And even if you didn't know exactly what it's for, which was my case, I found a lot of value in it. And because everyone can communicate with themselves better, everyone can do better. And this was really something that I wasn't aware of, and I became aware. And that benefits you regardless of your situation. I found, in my case, I found that perhaps I limited myself because I would use humour. I would see myself as this kind of sort of lazy, chancer, happy character. But then I realised, well, I am using that at times to restrict myself, because I will say, oh, well, you know, I'll try that in the future, and I'll put things where I should be perhaps serious, or perhaps I do really care about. And perhaps I could focus on that rather than sort of a laissez-faire attitude towards things. That was my big takeaway, and that's really helped me in some projects that I have going on at the moment. So it's practical in ways that you wouldn't even understand really going in. I know through going through the course with other people and speaking to you and Peter that if there is something that you have in mind that you're trying to get over, this could be a huge help, and you would know that. But like you say, if you're sitting on the fence, perhaps it's because you're not too sure, and I would say definitely go for it, because whatever you're sitting on the fence about, it might not even be that you realise you need the help for, you know, because I had no idea.
Thank you, Lee. Once again, really, thank you very much for taking the time to share your experiences and your thoughts about the dialogue of self-liberation with us in this way. And yeah, we really appreciate your positivity, your focus, and all of the great questions and the points of view that you raised personally during the course. I personally really love the expression that you coined, which I really relate to, is doing a Eubank.
Yeah.
In relation to reimagining ourselves, redefining ourselves, and recreating ourselves.
Yeah, I mean that was my big takeaway from this, was the sort of clean slate going forward. You know, the doing a Eubank, that was something that was really interesting to me, and I've given a lot of thought since. You know, so yeah, I hope my answers were clear. It's a bit of rambling because I'm still working to understand. You know, so it's quite hard to say exactly what I'm thinking because I'm in the process of enjoying going through it still at this moment, you know. So there we go.
And so am I.
Yeah.
So am I after all these years. That's
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about this.
Cool.
So yeah, lots of love to you, Lee. Thank you
Yeah, you
so
too,
much,
mate.
mate.
Thank you again for
Yeah,
the opportunity. So
I wish you a lovely evening, and we'll speak again soon.
okay, perfect. Cheers.
Cheers,
Take
mate.
care.
Bye bye.